Today on my first ever interview, I've got my guest, Loraine Marshall. She's a survivor, advocate, consultant, mentor, podcast host who specializes in post-separation legal abuse and the systemic failures that leave women without the support they need after leaving a toxic or abusive relationship. She found these gaps firsthand, and now she helps others navigate a system that often wasn't built with them in mind. In this conversation, we talk about what happens when the legal system fails you, the tools Loraine discovered that helped her, and the one thing she wishes someone had told her back when it all started. If you've ever felt like the people who were supposed to help you just didn't, this conversation is worth a watch. Hi Loraine, and welcome to my channel. Thank you for joining me today. I just wanted to start off with asking you to tell me a little bit about your story and when you realised you stopped trusting yourself.
All right, thank you for inviting me here, Laura. Yeah, I've got a very, very sort of long story, to be quite honest. But briefly, it is I moved to Spain in 2015, and I didn't understand that I was in a very vulnerable situation and also an abusive relationship. I didn't really understand all the dynamics at that point. It wasn't until much later in 2020, which I now call after the discard. It was like a 4-sentence discard speech where it ended the relationship after 11 years. And that was the point that my intuition took over. And there was something telling me that what had happened wasn't correct, it wasn't right. And then it took me about 8 months, I think, while I was in grief, trauma, shock, anxiety, uncertainty, and fear. I was going through lots of educational material online, which had been presented to me via YouTube. It was For You page. It was like, here's a video, Loraine, here's another video, Loraine. And all of these videos were popping up about narcissistic personality disorder, narcissistic traits, narcissistic abuse. And I started looking and watching these videos. And that's when I understood the whole background of the relationship. That was basically not a relationship, it was a manipulationship. And the experience I'd had after the end, when he did the discard, that was post-separation abuse. And that's when I understood everything. But the intuition was a really weird thing, because on the night of the discard, a thought came in. And that thought was, I am going to write my story. And I actually spoke it out loud in front of him that night. And it took me until April of 2021 before I actually started with the skeleton of that story, and I published it the following year in May 2022. And that story, when I published it, I had written it under extreme emotional and psychological manipulation and financial manipulation, because I was promised a settlement which would be half of the value of the property. And then he rescinded that within weeks of leaving. And I was left with no income and in trauma, while he was then processing a civil litigation against me in Spain to have me evicted so I would leave with nothing. And that was the trauma I was in while I was writing that first book. And I didn't write it in my name. I wrote it in a pen name, Loraine Keeling. And the title is Post-Separation Abuse, Betrayal and Abandonment, What Type of Man? And that book was the book that had me in front of a criminal investigation in Spain for 2 years because of 7 criminal allegations against me for telling the truth about what happened. And so I was very fortunate that by October 2024, the judge in the criminal court realised the manipulation and then dismissed the last of the allegations. So there's no allegations of any criminal wrongdoing outstanding. But I've been left, obviously, in a situation that I didn't actually want to be in when I'm now like nearing retirement. I'm having to start over and rebuild from practically nothing.
Oh my gosh, Loraine, that is like so much to go through for like one person and in such a short space of time. And did you feel like the process of writing your story, was it through that act that you started to put the pieces together? Like, was it quite cathartic for you to just have it written out to make you understand like what was going on?
Yes, it helped because what I was doing in that process was documenting everything. The emails I'd received, the text messages I've received. I even transcribed a recorded meeting, a live recorded meeting from 2020, transcribed it, and I had that put into the book. I mean, I did change all of the names in the book because of like real people, lawyers, and other people who were involved. So I didn't name people in the book, but I did document real emails, real text messages from it was basically, at that time, I had no clue if I would survive if the Spanish court evicted and made me homeless because I didn't have any income and I didn't have any money. And I was really in a bad position. So I documented it in the book as a survival mechanism, basically.
That's so amazing to like even think to do that as well. And like journaling is such a helpful process to help you slow down and evaluate what's happening. And especially if you've been subjected to manipulation, gaslighting, lying, like the only thing that really holds up is your writing and your story and helping you piece together what was going on and happening. And how how did it start to impact your life once you noticed all these things and everything came to light?
Well, that once I understood what had happened, I basically, my emotional well-being spiraled down. For everything that I know about personal growth and personal development that I've learned from years of reading books and training materials, right, went out the window because you can't put grief like on the back burner. It's not something that just happens and you can't just say, right, okay, I'm not grieving this thing. And you can't. It's impossible, right? So I did experience a lot of different emotions. And obviously there is the grief cycle, which I don't know if your listeners know about the grief cycle, but there's lots of different emotions that you go through the grief cycle. And one of them is anger. And to be honest, I did have a lot of anger because of what had happened and how I had been treated really disrespectfully and as if I didn't matter, right? So the anger was there. But I recognized that this I found this actual energy spiral where you've got the positive emotions rising to the top with truth and authenticity and love right at the top of the spiral, and then right at the bottom of the spiral you've got on the left side no will to live, and on the right side you've got your actual when you've got no will to live, and then the death, right? And so I recognized where I was on that spiral because I was right at the bottom left. And when I've posted that spiral diagram on different social medias, there was a lot of other women and some men who then commented to say that they'd been through various different traumas and they were as well at the bottom left. And I recognized then that there was only really one way to try and help to rise above where you are. And even anger is higher than the got no will to live, right? So if you're angry, that's a good thing, right? Because it's a righteous anger. And so that was a point where I was using that anger, and I was actually just picking up my mobile phone on a morning when I was getting out of bed, and I would press record on the audio app, the recording app, and I would be walking up and down in the kitchen, and I would be talking to this thing and saying this, and talking like everything that had happened, and this happened, and this happened, and I just started recording things and just getting it out of my system, just even speak, because I didn't have anyone, I was isolated. So just speaking to my own phone and recording it really helped. And then I started then delving into different learning materials, which were coaching things from Mary Morrissey, things from Dean Graciosi, and the, what's his name? Oh, Tony Robbins. And these people were putting out, because 2020 was lockdown,
Right.
there wasn't any like meetings you could go to and stuff like that, right? So basically, I was actually consuming the live broadcasts that they were putting out. Sign up here, and we're doing this live broadcast. So I signed up for any that I could, because I understood that learning something raises your vibration, your emotional energy vibration. And so that's what I was doing, consuming different training materials that were freely available just by signing up with my email, and listening to those things. And that really helped to on the road to recovery. And that's how I got through and actually writing and documenting and publishing the book, because I didn't have any clue, to be honest, about how I would publish a book. So that was another learning curve that I did.
Mm.
Um,
Do you think the
so
goal of having that book also helped you to have like something to focus on that wasn't just like about the abuse and what happened to you, but I have a purpose, I need to write this book, I need to help others figure this situation out, and like kind of like obviously as well, like you were saying about the talking your anger through and everything, like did you know all these things were like helping you when you were doing them?
it was instinct. It was just basic. It was my instinct that I knew obviously everything that was happening, but I also understood at the time that when you harbor all these negative emotions like revenge, anger, and these type of emotions, and all the sadness, guilt, and things like that, it actually impacts not just your emotional well-being, it impacts your physical health. Because I already understood that, I knew that you have to release all of that type of emotion out of your body. Otherwise, if you keep it inside, it was like, I think it was Nelson Mandela who said something about you'll drink the poison, that you will end up the one who is in bad health, and all of that. But the biggest thing that I couldn't sort of get through was the fear, because although I was like mindset and mindfulness and positive affirmations and things like that, that underlying fear followed me through all of the time that I was under very high stress, basically, and trauma. So there was an underlying fear, and I think this underlying fear keeps us in a stuck situation until we can get out of that fear situation, that thing that's keeping us there. Then we can't really do our best for any purpose that we want to do. We can't really do our best because we still have that underlying fear. So it's finding a way to get out of that. But what I heard from other people who were in domestic abuse groups and things like that was that while you're still in it, you can't truly heal. And that's when I understood that I won't be free of this fear until that situation's actually gone. until I'm in a secure place, you know. So yeah, there is a thing about trusting yourself. I could trust myself to be thinking, I need to be mindful, I need to be positive and things like that. But I couldn't still break the fear barrier. I couldn't break it because I was still in a situation. I could have been in prison and I could have been evicted. And at the end of the day, none of those things happened, which I'm very sort of grateful for and thankful for, because that massive fear was one that I just didn't want to happen, to be honest. And I know from my research that a lot of other women end up in that situation and they don't get the results that I have. Basically, it's in the court, this is this, that's that, but evicted and they're out. And I'm like, how can they do that? And I've researched it a lot. And apparently the domestic abuse situation mustn't be taken into account or it's denied. And in Spain, I think a lot of women have gone through that situation from the results of this research that I looked at. I think in UK and Ireland, it was around 40%. In Portugal, it was a bit higher. And in Sweden and Spain was the highest, like 90%. 90% of women who'd experienced domestic abuse in the relationship had ended up homeless.
Oh my gosh. And that's the other thing that just keeps us trapped in these relationships for so long, because of
Exactly.
financial dependence and fearing that things could be worse. So did you feel like you had to work through your fear in order to trust yourself?
Yes. And I was lucky that I was putting out information about what I've experienced. I was posting on social media. So I wasn't fearful about posting videos. I wasn't fearful about posting memes from other people, you know, from people who've got through the situation and come out the other side and now advocate for others. So I was posting other people's content and sharing that quite a lot. But yeah, the fear just hangs around, even though you know. I think there was a point where I knew that's what he wanted. In 2022, when I'd received an email, which in this email it was as if nothing had happened. It was just Happy New Year, Loraine, as if nothing had happened. And I'm read the email and he's saying, "Oh, somebody might want to buy the house. Can you accommodate a viewing?" And I'm like, oh, and I was just like so in shock at seeing this email. I had to get help to respond. And the response that I had was basically very simple. Yes, I will accommodate a viewing if you would honour your first agreement. And then bang, as soon as he got that, he flipped again and went into the other side, the other personality. And the next email I got was, "Have you not seen these court documents?" And when just reading this, right, the voice was in my head. I was reading the email. I could hear the anger coming from the email that I was reading. "I am sending you these court documents in a separate email. You are now at risk of the Guardia Civil turning up unexpectedly, and you will be asked to leave with just your personal possessions." And I read that email and my stomach dropped. And I thought, oh my God. Walked the living room backwards and forwards, feeling really sick. And then all of a sudden, it went ping into my head. He wants you to feel in fear. And that was like a moment that I thought, oh. And then I thought, well, the other thought that came in was I would need to send that email to the lawyer who would actually advise me to file a gender violence thing in the first place. That's the thought that came. And when I did that, I realised when the lawyer wrote back and told me, no, that can't happen. The court has to deliver the court documents first. And then he told me I should collect the documents. So that part of that story was how I understood the situation, that anything that he was like doing at this point, it was just more manipulation, just to make me feel fear.
And so was it through like understanding that you realized, well, I'm not going to give him that anymore then? And that's where like you could step into your power and realize I actually have a choice on how I like what I let him see and what I react to. And then did that help give you a bit more like trust over the situation because you could see what was happening a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I did, because I, because I knew the situation, because I'd worked through everything, and then I'd realised, like obviously the book hadn't been published, I was still writing it, and I think I published it in May 2022. But it was more empowering to know that. But the thing that I didn't realise was that the legal system and the legal professionals can end up re-traumatizing survivors as they enter into the legal system. Not just because I was entering into the legal system with a free public appointed lawyer and in family courts and things for other people and other survivors, this is a similar situation. And that is a re-traumatizer. It's an entry point that puts you back into fear. And I didn't understand how some legal professionals can actually be complicit in the enablement of like the abuse to keep on going through post-separation. It's just like legal intimidation. It's like a litigation abuse, which I never ever thought was what would happen, because I thought, well, I've got all of this evidence, I've wrote this book, I can show all the proof that I've got and everything. Couldn't. I was silenced in a court of law. I was silenced, and and that set me back a bit. But I still continued, and now I'm at a point now where I'm not in that situation that I was in. And the next book that I'm writing now and going to launch this year is After the Discard, No Divorce Required, because we weren't married. And I think the thing with the not married led the conversation as if I was some type of inferior person because I was in a relationship and not married. And I know that there's must be lots of women out there in similar situations, that they've been in cohabiting relationships, living together and whatever. And the treatment that I had from within the Spanish legal system was abysmal, basically.
There's so many like layers to it, and I'm kind of glad you brought it up about like it's not just like a one and done thing. You don't just like get all your trust back in one go, and you don't just get over your fear, especially with the post separation abuse, because everything's just elongated. You're like in and out of the abuse, and then there's the other layer of the court and facing all the legal stuff as well. And for your nervous system, it's so much stress to manage. And where you are at right now, what like can you can you describe what like a good day feels like for you now that you've got some distance from it and you're a little bit ahead from where you were with all the legal troubles?
Well, a good day for me is basically to be able to just get out of bed and have a shower, because I didn't have any running water when I was in the house that I was in. He terminated the utilities in 2023, and so I didn't have running water, hot water, and sanitation from 2023 to when I left in January of 2026. So just having a hot shower and a bathroom I can use is massive, massive change. The other thing is, I'm in the countryside, I'm in Spain, the weather's usually very nice, and the rest of it is being able to lift away the fog, because I was in so much trauma, so much emotional, stress that and confusion. I hadn't a clue who I was, what I was wanting to do, whether or not I could actually survive. So there's a lot of things that you go through, and then trying to rebuild things, because it's not easy to rebuild things, especially when, like me, I'm in a foreign country. It's not like I don't know the Spanish language. I'm not fully conversant in Spanish. So everything that I did was extra, like, difficult, right? Was more difficult. Um, but a good day would be me being uh, positive about what's coming forward, where I can just get up and have a creative, like, content to be able to sit and say, oh, I need to write this down. It just comes, it flows, right? You're just like, oh, I really need to do this. And so you get sat at your laptop or whatever, you create the content and you put the content out, which is the best state that you can think of, where you just feel positive and you can get up and you can get rolling on what you want to do, what you want to create. And the opposite of that is when you feel that, you feel really that low, in a low position, and you just think to yourself, oh Lord, I've still got all this, and it sort of overwhelms you, puts you back in the fog. But what I've found to help is I've been more using AI tools. So because of this, like, massive surge in, like, AI tools now, I've been experimenting with things. And because of I've been outspoken on social media, LinkedIn, X, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, I've been really putting things out there. I was actually invited to beta test an AI app, right, which was created by a guy who had been through domestic abuse situation. And that app I ended up beta testing. I got the link from someone else, and it's a chat GTP based thing. And I used it to input some of the things that happened to me. And that app told me the various statutes in Spain and the various statutes in the UK for a cross-border litigation. And I was blown away. I was like, this is great. So that app is now on App Store, free, right? That people can download who've been in or still in domestic abuse situations. And it's called Statute Finder. And it's helped me and countless other people to recognise the statutes and the time limits for various things that you go through, various things that happen to you. And so that is a helpful tool that I found. And the other thing is that in 2025, while I was using some of these AI tools, I got massive amount of validation, because I never got support, because every time I went to an organization, I wasn't listened to. The things that I told them was denied and pushed down. There was even psychologists that I'd been given an appointment to go see, basically, because I didn't have an interpreter with us, wouldn't even do the appointment. And I just thought, well, isn't that discrimination? Because I've turned up to a clinical appointment, and because I didn't speak Spanish and didn't bring in my own translator, the psychologist was like, out. And I thought, well, that shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen, but it did. So yeah, it is like there's a whole massive thing going on. It seems there's so much bias, there's so much discrimination, and there's so many people have societal views which are like misogynistic, like attitudes towards all of the domestic abuse situation. Even though this in Spanish law, they've got a big sort of protection of women and gender violence courts and things, which are just for women. Even with all of these laws, there's still lots of mistakes made. And that's why this next book I'm going to write is putting down what I've experienced. I'm basically turning into a whistleblower to expose all of the mistakes and failures, the systemic failures that I went through.
Is that to hopefully help someone else that might be in this situation so that they can have the tools that you didn't have at the time and have a bit more clarity and structure of the steps to follow? Because that's the thing, is you have to learn these things as you go. Like you don't really think you're ever going to need something like this. There's no like school of life about how to deal with abuse, post-separation abuse, the legal system and all these things like working against you. And
yes,
it's amazing, because I think it's also taken you on this journey to realize like the things that help you and the things that ground you and the tools that you have available, because you even spoke of like the gratitude for things, simple things like a hot shower that was so difficult for you before, that now you look at it and it's something special that you have access to. And you were saying about AI as well, with how validating that can be, especially if you're isolated after abuse. We don't necessarily have our network because that can be pushed away when you're in the abuse. So then to have, even though it's like a robot, but to just have someone mirror back your thoughts and validate them and even highlight the abusive parts is so helpful.
yes, yes. And I know from being on LinkedIn, there's lots of other women who advocate for this type of thing, and others who are looking at different AI things for helping with putting together documentation to actually look at sentences or judgments in cases. So if there's a judgment that is gone against the person, it can be uploaded into this AI tool that's been created, and then they can pull out any victim blaming language and say, this is victim blaming language, this is victim blaming language. Then that tool, you say you're going into a next appeal, you can then think, oh, right. So then you're being empowered through this tool, this AI, that can actually pinpoint the things that you need to know, instead of all of your emotional thing, all of the things that happened, it's sort of very emotional stuff. You can then A, this bit, B, this bit, C, this bit. Here's the full document, but this is the bit that you need to look at.
And obviously as well, it's just being wary that to not take everything as face value and do your own research and not just rely on the AI tool when it comes to law, because obviously it can still get things wrong.
This is true.
Yeah, so you do have to have like a level of knowledge about the law in the country that you're in. But like you said, it can help just remove a bit of the emotion that comes up with all this stuff and look at things a little bit more logical and in black and white as well.
Yes.
I was going to ask you, if you could go back to your hardest point and give yourself one piece of advice that you wish you'd known then, what would that be?
Truth. To be honest, I think it would be, I think it's the point where I didn't really understand anything about emotional abuse, psychological abuse. And that went back to, obviously the whole relationship was a manipulation anyway, but it went back to 2017 in a confession he made to me about cheating, telling me he just met this woman the month before in November and he was cheating. And that for me, to be honest, was a point that I really should have been able to say, right, that's it, and leave. But I didn't. I don't know why. It was like I ended up forgiving him, right? Because the type of person I was thinking, well, my mother and father had a relationship. Like my mum cheated, this, that, and the other. So I knew lots of people go through this type of thing where their partner cheats or their husband cheats on them, and sometimes they don't end that relationship. They continue the relationship. I wish I'd had someone who understood all of that situation. So when I actually spoke to them people and said, oh, he's done this, this has happened, that the advocate or the support person or the therapist or whoever would have then said, it sounds like this, it sounds like psychological abuse, it sounds like emotional abuse, it sounds like narcissistic traits.
Yeah.
If someone had said something like that in 2017, I wouldn't be completely economically devastated now, because I could have then saved myself from that point forward. And I didn't need to forgive him then, which I did, because I worked on, I thought, well, look, if he's, because I asked him the question, do you still want me in your life? You know, because he was having another woman and I didn't actually consent to having a triangular relationship with anybody. It was meant to be just two of us. There was no consent there for him doing anything like that. And so, you know, I wouldn't be in the situation I am in now, basically financially and economically drained, which I know a lot of women end up in this position as well, and having to try and rebuild. Well, the thing is, because I'm a foreigner in Spain, I've got no safety net. It's not like I could just go to like the social security and say, oh, well, you know, here I am. I need my rent and I need this and I need this, like it is in the UK for people, because there isn't that for foreigners.
It's so much
Very
harder.
difficult to, you know, get back on your feet, basically, to get back on your feet. I'm trying my best and it's working a little bit, and see that, you know, things are going to move. And I know that, but you've got to be in a good space for things to be moving. And now I've got that good space. I'm just keep my fingers crossed everything's going to work out.
Well, me too, because like, yeah, you've been on such a journey, and like, no one I know is more deserving of success after everything that you've been through. I just think like your resilience, and for other women to hear this and to also know someone that's been through all these things, because there will be people that need that help, and also sometimes you have to start off with the free tools because you don't have the financial ability to go and pay for a lawyer straight away and do these things. So people like you that are putting out this information and on your socials and things like that, which I'll put in the description, they can come and follow your journey and learn so much from what you've been through, and it's so helpful. Which brings me to my last question was, is there anything like you wish you could tell women as like a piece of advice that you think would really benefit them from what you've learned and been through, that you've wish you would have known sooner as well, which I guess is similar to the last question, but more about, is there like a warning or like some little nugget of information that you think would really help someone else that you've learned from hindsight?
Yeah. Basically that what has happened to them was never their fault. They were not to blame for anything that happened. The anger, the cheating, the lies, the manipulation, even if there was physical abuse, they are not to blame. Because I know that through the relationship, it was always like, if something wasn't like right for him, who got the blame? I did. So the blame was always pushed back to me. It was like, you haven't done this, or like, you should have done that, and you didn't drive the right way. You're meant to be going this way, like, and I'm like, I'm driving the car. You just simple, tiny little things, right, which all just add up over time. And I've heard people say it's like, oh, death by 1,000 cuts, because it's like one tiny paper cut, a little tiny paper cut, and then all of those paper cuts are mounting up over a space of years. And it's not just an incident, it's just a pattern of behavior that you don't even understand. So yeah, you're not to blame, and you are worthy and deserve better.
And
That's the
that's,
two things I think that I would have, like, yeah.
it's such an important message just hearing that, because like you said, there is so much self-blame after everything that you've been through, because of, it's like a slow like hypnotizing or like brainwashing that you are not aware of what's happening, and you don't notice how you're starting to override your own beliefs with what they're telling you. And it's just like, because it happens so gradually, over such a long period of time, and then there's also bits of good that come in and weave in and out, you just can't see it, it's so invisible. And I think having that reminder that you are not to blame is so validating at the end of it, like to just hear that, and be reassured that none of this is their fault.
Yeah, and that they are worthy and deserve better.
Yeah, what you're
Yeah,
worthy just for breathing, like, and it's a hard thing to like learn after being through abuse, to start rebuilding your self-worth, because it's been, well, you're a shell of who you are at the end of it. But going through all these little things and rebuilding your self-trust does take a long time. It's a lot of work, and there isn't necessarily an end goal, because there's always going to be things that test us and challenge us along the way. So I think it's really important. And I'm really, really grateful for you sharing some of your story today, Loraine. And if people want to get in contact with you, where can they find you?
well, I'm on social media, and find us on successwithloraine.com.
And like I said, I'll put everything in the description so people can reach out to you. And thank you so much for your time today, Loraine, and for sharing everything that you did. It's going to be so helpful for other people to hear.
You're welcome. Thank you, Laura.